Here's the deal, guys. Um, After the Ole Miss ball game, I was at that game in Austin, and if you saw my video after that, I pretty much just kind of talked about how I'd had it. I mean, we looked like, and no one can really argue with, we look like one of the worst football teams in the country. Not just the conference, the entire league. After the way we got beat by Brigham Young and the way we got pounded by Ole Miss. Only beating New Mexico State, which doesn't even really count. So yeah, we looked awful, and I talked about how bad this team was. Um, but now today we get to here, we just got our tails whipped by Oklahoma State. But here's what I'll say about this Texas Longhorns team, because they did win 6 games in a row in the Big 12. Here's the conclusion we can make up to this point. The Texas Longhorns are not as bad as I thought they were after they lost to Ole Miss. They're not. What this game proves, though, is they're still not as good as they should be. Oklahoma State is a good football team. They had a bad game against West Virginia at Morgantown and lost that game. Other than that, they've played extremely well, mainly on defense, which is a big surprise to anyone who knows anything about Oklahoma State football, probably even more so to their fans. Clint Shelf is a great quarterback. He really managed the game well, and he really, used his legs. That was really the big strong suit for him. And you already have those great backs in the backfield. Today, the Texans had their opportunities to keep it close. They did. But that's the difference. Texas had opportunities. They didn't get them. Oklahoma State took advantage of every opportunity they got. But by the end, it was pretty sure that the better team won today in Austin. Case McCoy didn't have a good game. Had a couple interceptions. The defense did what they could, but they couldn't stop a consistent running game of Oklahoma State. And the offense, Malcolm Brown, I thought, played well. Joe Bergeron played well before he got banged up. We had a good running game, but I felt like we got away from it. But nobody's going to talk back and forth. What it comes down to is this: Oklahoma State's a better football team than Texas. And this whole Big 12 race has been fun, all this kind of good stuff. But the thing is, you look at the teams Texas has beat. Who on this schedule, when you say, hey, we beat X, is impressive at this point? Is it Oklahoma? Not anymore. Oklahoma, yeah, they beat Iowa State today, but Oklahoma's not very good this year either. I'm still impressed with the way we played in that game against the Sooners, because I thought that was our most complete game of the whole season, the way they played. But in the end, Kansas State? We beat Kansas State when they didn't have anything together. If we had to play K-State today, Kansas State would beat Texas. They would. That's just how it is right now. West Virginia is not a good football team. We saw that. We should have lost to them last week. We had a great gutsy performance to come back in overtime, won that ball game, but they got beat by Kansas. And Kansas is one of the worst teams in the entire league. So here's where Texas stands right now, when we're just talking about this one season. Mathematically, if we're just not talking about the actual teams in the field, just mathematically, the Horns are still in the Big 12 race. Because if Baylor beats Oklahoma State, and if they beat Tech tonight, if they beat Tech and they beat Oklahoma State, then if Texas beats Tech, then it's still for the Big 12 championship in Waco. Because if we beat Baylor, you get with them, but you get the head-to-head tiebreaker, and you would probably go to the BCS Bowl. That's the math part of it. The actual part of it is if you can't beat Oklahoma State, you're probably not going to beat Baylor. And I look for next on Thanksgiving when we play against Texas Tech, who I don't think is a very good team either. That doesn't. Now, when I say Tech's not good, that doesn't mean that we're going to beat them, because I don't think Texas is very good either. I think Texas is full of a group of guys who do try, who are playing hard and want to win. I think that's something, because I question that after Brigham Young and Ole Miss, and I think I was right to do so, especially BYU. There's absolutely no fight when Texas was down in that game. But they've come alive, and I think Case McCoy has let do that. I think Mac Brown deserves credit for that. Greg Robinson definitely deserves credit for that, to get this defense from being, the putrid stain on existence that it was when this thing started. But let's be real, guys. We all knew this was going to come to an end at some point. Texas has not been overly impressive against any really good teams. You dominated TCU. TCU is trash. You barely beat Iowa State. You really stole one against Iowa State, and Iowa State's trash. You whipped Kansas, that's fine. But really, Texas hasn't done anything this year to make us think that they're over and above what they should be. And I keep going back to this, but I'm not going to let this go. This season started with a message sent out that 2013, Texas is back. We're back to being that dominant program that competes on a national level, where week after week the whole country is looking to watch what the Longhorns do because it affects the national championship race. That is clearly not the case whatsoever with this team. And we'll see where we go from here. I mean, look, is this still something to play for? Of course. And of course I want to beat Texas Tech because I can't stand them. So that'd be great if we could knock off Texas Tech on Thanksgiving in front of about half the crowd at DKR, because if we're not playing A&M on Thanksgiving, apparently nobody cares to show up. And that will end, of course, then we will end the season at Waco, where, here's my thoughts with the whole Baylor thing at the end of the year. If Baylor's undefeated going that game, which is a big if, because I think Oklahoma State, that's a good ball game, Baylor versus Oklahoma State. That's going to be a true test for both of those teams. And I think Baylor may win that game, but Oklahoma State's a good enough football team that they could beat Baylor. And it's at Stillwater. That's a great game to look forward to. If Baylor wins that game in Stillwater, I really fear for the Texas Longhorns. On the very last game in Floyd Casey, if they get the chance, they will run the score up and they won't stop to beat Texas in the last game to clinch a conference title. Yeah. So, but that's kind of getting ahead of everything. Today, Oklahoma State's just better. And I was excited for the game, excited that maybe I thought Texas did have a chance. I thought Okie State's rush defense wasn't great. It hadn't been great this season, and we did run the ball well, but we couldn't finish off drives. You can't throw interceptions, and you gotta somehow stop that offense on a consistent basis. Couldn't do any of that. So props to Mike Gundy. Props to the people up in Stillwater. I've said this before. Some of the best fans are Oklahoma State fans. I've been up there to Stillwater for a game, expecting a lot of venom and hatred. Just because you're the road team and you're Texas, couldn't be further from the truth. Really good people. Unlike the people in Norman, the guys up in Stillwater, it's good people up there. So, congrats Oklahoma State. You came into DKR and you whipped our tails. You deserve you deserve the victory. And I'm looking forward to a big showdown with them against Baylor. That should be a great game. For Texas, it's Texas Tech next. I'm making this before the Baylor Tech game, so I don't know what's going to happen with that one. So I'm not even going to, it's before that game started. So Hook 'em Horns, Texas fight. And as I said, the most interesting part of this year is not going to be really the season. It's the offseason. Now with Steve Patterson's new AD, what do we do with Mac Brown? What happens with Rick Barnes in basketball? That's the real story and the real intrigue, the Texas Longhorns. It's not really what happens on the field. That's the fun week to week. But what's the big picture? Let's go towards that. Hook 'em Horns, Texas fight, and congrats Oklahoma State.